You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All righty, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Doing good, man. Been consumed by the tournament, right? And all the fun games, right? Some have been a little bit of a blowout, but there's still been a lot of really good competitive games. We have our Cinderella story in NC State, the 11 seed going on an amazing run, winning the ACC tournament to dang near get in, and then making it all the way to the Final Four. So, kudos to them. And then obviously you have your powerhouses in UConn, Purdue, and then why am I struggling with the fourth team? That's terrible.
Because it's
Alabama.
Alabama, and we all hate Alabama.
Yeah, Bama. Yeah.
We've been conditioned to block them out of our minds.
Yeah, exactly. No Saban equals not relevant.
Alabama.
So, but yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm rooting for Purdue, right? I have a whole bunch of extended family who went there. Both of my parents went there. So I have a lot of ties to the Boilermakers. So I'm actively rooting for them. I think that'd be nice to let the rest of the family kind of enjoy in the same way that I got to enjoy for a Georgia championship, right? And so I'm that's where my allegiance lies here. I think Zach Edey has been playing out of his mind, but I do think this matchup with NC State's going to be crazy between Burns and Edey, and how that plays out. The good thing is Purdue's not going to have to double Burns, right? Edey's tall enough, to make Burns shoot over the top of him and possibly adjust his shot enough that it could make life a little difficult for him. Where Edey needs to be careful is he needs to make sure he's moving his feet. Otherwise, Burns is going to put him in foul trouble. And if Edey's out of the game, that's where Purdue gets in big trouble. So we're going to see how that game shakes out. But I think that'll be a good matchup, right? A good old-fashioned down in the paint bruising matchup between two centers who kind of carry the workload for their respective teams. So, and that'll be good. And then you have, yes, Alabama. Thank you for reminding me. And then UConn, the streak of just dominant double-digit wins continues. And really 30-0 run against Illinois. Like, Illinois is not a bad basketball team, guys. And to go that cold, 0 for 17, they went in that 30 nothing stretch, something like you don't get that cold. Like the odds of missing 17 consecutive shots. And a lot of those were decent shots, right? It wasn't just, end of shot clock, huck it up and hope for the best. It was, some ball movement, some just missed jumpers, both mid-range and from three. They missed a couple, what I would call bunnies, right? The close in, they just didn't get them in. So, crazy, but congratulations to UConn as they're defending their title. And we're on our way. And then we saw last night the most watched women's college basketball game of all time between Iowa and LSU. Was it 12.6 million viewers, I believe is the number.
12.3 was 12.3.
Okay. So it probably was. So 12.3 million viewers. So good for them. Kudos. I had it on the background. I'm not gonna lie, just to kind of check it out, mainly because I was rooting for Iowa. Like I was not a fan of how the LSU team conducted themselves. So it was, my preference, but it was a good game, right? The third quarter, Iowa kind of took charge and really seemingly did everything in the final minute and a half to give that game up in some regards, going from up by 14 at one point to it being an 8-point game, but Iowa couldn't get out of their own way there for a minute with mental lapses. So it was a good thing they had that big lead built up. But congratulations to a good season to LSU, and we'll see how Iowa shakes out in the women's Final Four. and go on from there. But them and UConn, right? That's who's going up against each other. UConn and Iowa, and then you have South Carolina and NC State again on the other time. So two Final Four teams.
Yeah.
One on the men's, one on the women's are from the same school in NC State and UConn. So kudos to those two schools. You got to be super proud of your basketball department.
Yeah. I think the athletic directors of both of those programs has to be hitting the suspenders hard, right? You're
not relevant in football, so you might as well put your hat on this and say, hey, here we go.
It's been a good tournament. Did either of you guys watch any UFL games over the weekend?
Negative, Ghost Rider.
I caught a quarter of the Renegades and whoever they were playing. I did catch a quarter of it. We were out at lunch, so that game was on at the same time as one of the basketball games was on. So a little bit, but with this being March, right? Like this first weekend was a little tough. I was preoccupied with tournament basketball and not first season of regular season developmental league football.
I caught a little bit. The transparency of it is great. I didn't watch a full game, but I caught about a quarter and a half. And the way that you can hear the referee communications, the way that you can hear it's Dean Blandino is the head of officiating for that league, and the way you can hear his communication to the officials on site. It's refreshing. It's nice to understand what they're going through, like how they're calling things. I mean, the NFL kind of, I think for a long time they were defend the shield, but also hide behind the shield. And they did a pretty good job of that. They've done a pretty good job of hiding behind the shield. Look, we know that the officiating came under fire, and it's been under fire for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's only going to continue to be under fire when you allow gambling to take such a large part and play such a large role in your sport, right? Like,
Don't you take that away from me, Alex Egan.
No, well, I'm not saying to take it away.
Your phone number and your home address.
Don't dox me.
Don't you?
But what I'm saying is, you have that be a part of your game. Like every single call matters, right? So no matter what, like the calls matter. Calls that you think are inconsequential in the first quarter could pay off dividends on somebody's prop bet that they've got, a couple large on, right? So it was nice to see how the officiating was handled. And just to understand, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're doing. And like, you understand, okay, that's why they called it the way they called it. And it's not left up to the announcers trying to guess what's going on, or trying to, in some cases, defend the decision of the referees because they've been told that they need to do that by their bosses, right? So it was nice. It was nice to kind of understand how they were doing it. And look, it is, as you mentioned, Kevin, it is developmental football. It's kind of fun to see some of the names or hear some of the names from some of these guys, because you're like, oh, I kind of remember seeing him in college. That's what happened to him, So it's a good time. I enjoyed it. I don't know that I'm going to actively seek out those games, but I was just poking around and saw one on Saturday or Sunday. I can't remember what it was. And
I'm surprised you didn't hear the eye roll from my wife when I turned on the football game at the house, because it was seriously, it was an audible eye roll. Like you could absolutely hear her touching the back of her skull because she was so frustrated football was back on TV, and it was the 1st of April. Like, again? I was like, no. I said, honey, this is the same. I don't have anything invested in these games. I'm just checking it out. It's okay.
I don't think she was alone in that.
Oh man, it was humorous.
You might have missed an opportunity to sit there and go, April Fools! Gotcha.
No, April Fools. It's actually on TV. It's like, He says, do you care about this? I'm like, no, I don't. I'm not nearly as vested in this as I am once, August, September roll around, honey. We're okay. I can turn this off.
That's
So
pretty good.
it's all good. But aside from the tournament, football and soccer season has started for the little ones, right? So I get to do that and coach and spectate and cheer on and all that good stuff. So it's good for the kids, right? Weather's getting nicer, so it's nice to be able to tell them to go outside and run around, and they're not going to come in 15 minutes later frostbite. So I've been pretty happy about that.
There you go. I like it. Any news, any notes, anything we want to hit up? Or are we ready to start breaking down some players?
There wasn't much in the way of news this week. A couple off the wall signings that I can think of, both by the Chiefs. One was, hey, Carson Wentz has a team. He'll be the backup quarterback to Patrick Mahomes this year. Crazy. That dude was the second overall pick in 2016. And he is now on 1-year deals, bouncing around. This will be his, fifth team in 7-ish seasons. So
how do you not kick the tires on him if you're the Broncos? Like, you're
really
going to roll with Jared Stidham? Like, are you so vested or invested in this draft that you're not even going to kick the tires on Carson Wentz? Like, and then you have the Vikings, who it is Sam Darnold or bust,
Right.
unless they hit the lottery in the draft and they get the guy that they're going after. Like, a lot of questionable calls, at least at this point, of who the current depth chart would say your starting quarterback is.
Right. It's not like you got to break the bank to bring Carson Wentz in, right? Like, throw him on a 1-year league minimum. Like, I don't know what I honestly don't know what the deets were on his contract with the Chiefs, but it couldn't have been much more than the league minimum, right? Because he might still be getting paid from Philly. So that was a thing. And then I know Kevin's vigorously looking it up, so I'm going to try to.
No, you're
stall.
good. I was seeing if Over the Cap had it on there yet, but
I don't know if it's become public yet. I'm sure they have to release it here soon. But also, the Chiefs signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire for slipped up there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire to a 1-year deal. So two signings there that were a little interesting. But I haven't seen too much in the way of other news and notes. I think we're starting to get into in F1, they call it silly season, right? It's where like all the rumors start getting put out there, and not a lot of them are true, but like sometimes where there's smoke, right? Like that's what they do, and it happens towards the tail end of the F1 season, and where drivers are trying to figure out where their seat is next year. It's kind of the NFL equivalent right now, where we're starting to get into NFL silly season and these teams are going to start throwing out smoke screens about which prospects are where, and you're going to start to see some meteoric rises of dudes, and you're like, where is this coming from? And it won't make sense until draft night. And it's one of those times a year, because it is April and the draft is, just a couple weeks away now. So it'll be kind of interesting to see which player kind of jumps up, like flies up the draft boards because somebody's super high on them, and which dude just tumbles down, right? Like, it's going to happen. We'll see what it all culminates, on that Thursday night. But it's about time for that stuff to start happening.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very, very true. And, the funny thing is, right, when y'all were going through and talking about some of the quarterbacks and hitting the lottery on the quarterbacks, is how many of these quarterbacks just don't pan out, right? And taken in the first round, and how many of these that you see go through, and all of these teams are very quick to spend a lot of draft capital on a guy that they hope is the guy, to turn around and 3 or 4 years later have that guy not even on the roster anymore, but they leverage 3 to 4 years to go and get that guy in a lot of cases. So very interesting. And I think that we'll see a couple of teams ultimately do things like that this year again. And it'll be interesting to see how this ultimately plays out down the road. But looking through it, there's not many teams that in the NFL right now that have their starting quarterback was drafted by them in the first round right now. So, in fact, a lot of teams starting quarterbacks were drafted in the first round by somebody else. And for a league that doesn't really have a whole lot of free agency at the quarterback position, it's very, very interesting. So, anyway, little side note there. But yeah, so we do have some players to break down here. Talking quarterbacks, talking running backs tonight, and then going forward, we're going to start seeing some more in the mock drafts. Really, that's kind of what our plan is the next 3 weeks leading up to draft spectacular on draft night. There, where we'll be live and going through all the reactions to the first round picks there. So, but are we ready to start breaking down some QBs?
Let's do it.
Yep.
All righty, Kevin, you've been the lucky charm. Go ahead and start it off.
All right. I'm going to start off with Drake May, the redshirt sophomore out of UNC, standing at 6'4", 223 pounds, projected to be a top 3 pick. I guess first overall, May's a very good athlete, borderline great athlete, right? He has a great mix of size and quickness / speed that allows him to run when necessary. It's very strong arm, can deliver the ball with high velocity outside the numbers and on deep throws. And when his feet are set, shows great accuracy to all 3 levels on the field. Kind of the thing that we forget about Drake May is how much talent the North Carolina Tar Heels actually graduated or put into the pros in his 3 years there on campus, right? Between his redshirt year and then his sophomore and junior year where he was starting, really turned over that roster a lot, and they just didn't quite fill in with the same type of talent. Their offensive line was terrible in 23, and he still put up very solid numbers. He was just under fire a lot. He comes from a really strong bloodline. His dad played football for UNC when he attended college, and his brother was a 2-time ACC all-conference player when he played football at North Carolina. So he is a Tar Heel through and through. And I think his game does translate well to the next level, but not without some development. He does hold on to the ball a little bit too long. So when that happens in the NFL, you get eaten up by the defense, right? So that decision-making process needs to speed up. And then at times, footwork, right? All quarterbacks, but Drake May at times got a little gun shy or feeling like he had to make a play at North Carolina. So he didn't work on as much of the footwork, more so than just trying to keep his team in the game in a lot of cases. So needs to keep that on par, because when he gets sloppy with his footwork, you see his accuracy and velocity drop off quite a bit. And then again, because of maybe seeing ghosts, if you will, not to make it sound terrible, but again, because the offensive line was so bad, he took a lot of unnecessary risks when under pressure, right? Because he was trying to keep his team in the game and trying to make things happen. So a few things, right? Things for him to kind of work on and refine. But overall, I think he's a very solid prospect, and kind of depending on where he goes with the right coaching, I think Drake May could make, yes, I did say that right, a very solid pro. I'm not sure that he screams all pro or the next Joe Burrow or Tom Brady or Josh Allen or anything, but I do think he could be a very solid professional quarterback. So a lot of it's going to depend on how the coaching and development here in his early stages works out for him. So a landing spot will be crucial for his early success.
All right, next up, we got Jaden Daniels, Mr. Win Everything this last year in terms of personal awards. He is a super senior, 6'4", 210 out of LSU. Started his career at Arizona State. And actually, I say literally started. The dude has started everywhere he's been. And that is what intrigues a lot of these NFL teams, is that he's a 5-year starter. So you're not getting a young pup coming there out of LSU. So that is a big thing of that he has the experience, and he played very well in the SEC. Last year, he threw 40 touchdowns and only threw 4 interceptions. So this is good decision-making, can run as well. He's the only FBS player in the history of the FBS to throw for 12,000 yards and rush for 3,000 yards in a career. The scouting report on him is that he possesses the football intelligence to get himself protected and take care of the football with quality decision-making, accurate passer, and is able to anticipate and slice and dice zone coverages. He did have noticeable issues putting deep throws on faster receivers, and lacks the ideal size and arm talent. And that's the big thing that is the knock against him, that he's a little bit of a slender frame that's going to lead to durability concerns. We've seen it with running quarterbacks before. It's tough. Like, look, the SEC is probably the closest you're going to get to playing an NFL defense week in and week out, but still it is a jump from the SEC defense to the NFL defense. And that's going to be something that is going to he is going to have to figure out. Wherever he goes, he's probably going to be expected to be the week 1 starter. He grades out as a week 1 starter, and that's probably what's going to happen, right? If that's the right thing for him or if that's the wrong thing for him, that's the curse of being a high-end quarterback in this day and age in the NFL, is that teams are bringing you in to hope that you can fix their problems that are much different than just a quarterback, or much deeper than just a quarterback. I'll give you a few more things on his strengths here. Willing to plant his flag and attack defenses from the pocket, maintains his passing platform when sliding around the platform, and has made footwork as a passer a priority during his career. Those are all big things for NFL coaches. A few more knocks against him. He has a below average push and placement on deep throws, as I mentioned, and has a tendency to fall off on fade throws, leaving them short. But wherever he goes, he's going to be expected to start week 1. Hopefully it's a team that can build around him and protect him, and he'll have a nice little career there in the NFL.
All righty. Next up, we've got Caleb Williams, the 6'1", 214-pound junior out of USC, and he's a pocket passer, and sometimes that can come to a detriment, right? Like he has the ability to get out there. He's athletic, he's mobile, he can rock and roll through that, but he does prefer to stay in the pocket and throw the rock there. He is used to playing hero in the in the system coming out of USC, in that Lincoln Riley system, and because he comes from a system where the offense really has to score on almost every drive to stay in the game. He has the ability to reset the pocket to create better throws. Has some crazy arm talent, right? Like, a lot of times when we see him throwing, he can find the different slots with that and make throws of the ball from just about any arm position out there. There is some opportunity with the lower body when it's getting it set and getting it back under him on shorter throws, intermediate throws. Really kind of played in a one read passing offense there. So those are kind of some of the knocks, but this is a guy that will likely be the number 1 overall pick going to the Bears here. And I do believe that that's where we'll see this draft capital play out. So it'll be interesting to see, right? The Bears certainly, bringing in some other opportunities and some better talent around him. And we could very well see him kind of get off to an okay start here, but there is going to be a learning curve, I do believe, when we see him step onto a pro field with the system that he played in college, and how that's going to translate to the next level.
So next up, we got JJ McCarthy, the junior quarterback out of Michigan, who's at the moment, right, the pre-draft riser. He's the guy who so much of the buzz has been about here the last couple weeks. Standing at 6'2", 219, went from late to mid, now early first round pick. So we're gonna see where this shakes out. We've heard his name connected to a lot of different teams. The Broncos, the Vikings, and the Commanders are the top three that come to mind when talking about JJ McCarthy and kind of doing a little bit of research on what the scuttlebutt is around the league. Ultimately, the kid's a winner. And you just can't take that away from him. He came in a run heavy offense, but he was still able to take the team on his back when they needed him the most. So you appreciate his competitive drive and his ability to do that. His pocket presence is it's just average. I wouldn't say that it's great, but he had a great offensive line at Michigan to help with that. Overall, he does have good footwork, and his decision-making skills are very, very good as well. So his ability to slide around the pocket and even scramble helped get him out of the few problems that he did face, especially this past season for the Michigan Wolverines. He has a good to strong arm. He can make all the throws, but he is not an elite passer. And overall, he's just best in play action situations, right? That's where he kind of made his hay at Michigan, and that's what he's most comfortable in. He can struggle on the deep throws, particularly to the right side, which I found a little interesting, right? So there's got to be some footwork, mechanical issue there, whether it's getting his hips around to drive that through outside and to the right. Excuse me. So the NFL coaches will need to obviously work on that so defenses can't tee off on it. And then really, he just needs to work on his touch. Everything from McCarthy right now is a fastball. And while that works, yes, much like Josh Allen, there we go. That's the name I was thinking of. That was a big knock on him coming out, right? Like he didn't have a whole lot of touch. It was just all fastball. McCarthy is the same way, only his fastball doesn't touch 105 like Allen's does. His fastball is sitting, around 95, 98. So a couple different things, but he's definitely been the hot name here. I think as everyone pretty well has set on the fact that the Bears are going to draft Caleb Williams. McCarthy's been slated, excuse me, anywhere from 2 all the way down to 10. It just depends on what draft board you're looking at what point. So tune in next week and you'll find out where the boys have him slotted in our mock draft 1.0.
All right, moving on. We've got Michael Pratt. He is a senior out of Tulane, 6'2.5", 217 pounds, 9 1/4 inch hand. We haven't been talking about hand size, gentlemen. The weirdest thing that we can talk about. He is he did well for himself, right? Tulane had a great season last year. A lot of people took notice on what they were doing down there, and as a result, he is getting a little bit of draft stock here now. Michael Pratt. Scouting report on him is he has done a nice job of making safe decisions instead of reckless ones, and throws with touch over all 3 levels. However, he struggles to throw with consistent accuracy and placement on intermediate throws. And also, he appears to lack the anticipation and field awareness to be NFL coverage across the field. Go back to a little bit more of his strengths. 4-year starter, 3-year team captain down there in New Orleans. Displayed consistent improvement at the position over 4 years. So that's what coaches want to see, right? Get better every day. That's what he's done. And has done a nice job of selling pump and go throws. Adequate mobility, creates additional yardage as a scrambler. Some more weaknesses: below average timing and arm talent as a full field thrower. Doesn't throw with enough anticipation against zone windows, and slow to get through progressions and locate open targets on the backside. He is projected as a day 3 draft pick, and will go into a camp not to compete for a starting job, but to compete for a backup role. And, should be seen as an adequate backup, but realistically, a lot of these guys that we're talking about, they're going to hear their name on day 1. We won't hear Michael Pratt's name on day one, but we should hear it at some point. And I tell you what, that's still just as good.
All righty. So Spencer Rattler, next one up for that the rock and rolling through. 6 foot, 211 pounds. He's a senior out of South Carolina. He has a tendency though to lock on to targets a little bit and can kind of follow him with his eyes there. He does have the ability to scramble, pick up some yards. He can throw the ball pretty accurately when he is set. He is willing to take kind of the big shot and hang in there when there's pressure coming. He does allow for space to develop around the wide receiver instead of trying to really fit it into a super tight window. But there is a tendency that he tends to stay on his back foot a little bit instead of really driving through the ball to get the ball downfield, especially if there's pressure coming in there. He can be a little late with some throws, tends to leave the ball on the back hip a little bit on in-breaking routes, on routes coming over the middle, and that could spell some disaster, against some of these NFL secondaries and linebacking cores. If you're going to leave the ball behind the receiver over the middle. There's some decision-making opportunities there, right? Like, the anticipation throws are a bit of an area of opportunity, but the throwing motion is smooth. Can get the ball out quick, especially in an RPO type of situation, and does well there. Spencer's a guy that we're probably going to see taken. He might sneak into day one, or we'll see him in day 3. But this is a round 3, round 4 type of draft pick.
Right on. And then the last guy I have on my list is Jordan Travis, the senior quarterback out of Florida State University. 6'1", 200 pounds. Right now, projecting as kind of a mid-third round draft pick. He does have the ability to run with the ball, right? He is a I'm not going to say he's a running quarterback, but he definitely included a lot of the running in his game. So he has the ability to extend plays and take off when nothing's there. Overall, he has very good ball security. So his decision-making process was more than acceptable, right? FSU was well on their way to the playoff until he got injured. 3 weeks with 3 weeks left in the season, regular season. So it kind of bummed out a lot of those Florida State fans. And then obviously the rest is history. And he has great waist up mechanics. So his eyes, his arm placement, his ability to get his shoulders turned, all those things are very, very good. But that leads to lower body mechanics needing work. He can get happy feet. He doesn't drive through his throws, can fall off of his back foot a little bit too often, and he throws off platform too often for anybody to be very comfortable with it. He is on the older side of the rookies, much like Daniels, right? One of the older guys coming out, but Jordan Travis he's mentally sharp. He does remain cool under pressure. So NFL coaches will like that because he doesn't get too high. He doesn't get too low. He's very much on to the next play. And then kind of the last thing is he does rely on his athletic ability too much at times, and he's not always aware of the backside pressure. So as he's falling off, and scrambling outside the pocket to buy a little bit of time, sometimes he's not seeing that D end or linebacker coming through the backside to get after him, and that can cause a little bit of problems here. So, late day 2 pick, definitely a little bit of a project. He's not starter ready, but does pose that's not what I want to say. He does have a lot of the attributes that NFL teams will gravitate towards just because he can be a little bit different and he can keep the linebacking core honest in RPO situations.
All right. My last quarterback we have from Oregon by way of Auburn, Bo Nix, 6'2", 214 pounds, has already played a ton of football at the collegiate level. He was the number 1 recruit in high school when he was coming out. His freshman year, he won SEC Freshman of the Year at Auburn. Started all 11 games in the COVID year. Went 12-7 for touchdowns and interceptions. Started all 10 games at Auburn in 2021, and then transferred to Oregon, where he was honorable mention All Pac-12, and then finished third in the Heisman voting this last year, behind a couple other dudes. His dad was an Auburn QB and a coach at the high school and college level. His grandpa won 300 games in 41 seasons as a high school coach. So he comes from a coaching family, a football family. And he's got brothers, an adopted brother who transferred from Troy to Oregon, and another brother who walked on Clemson's football team as a defensive back. Get into what the scouting report says about him. 5-year starter, play has matured. Displays accuracy, arm talent, and athleticism consistent with today's brand of pro quarterback. Throws with good velocity and puts the ball on the money when throwing on the move. He's a play extender with arm talent to win with secondary action as a passer. Some of the knocks against him is that nearly 30% of his passes in 2023 were thrown behind the line of scrimmage. That's a Pro Football Focus stat there. That's a big number, and that's not a number that you're going to see in the NFL. Behind the line of scrimmage passes, I think the only two teams that really utilize behind the line of scrimmage passes, maybe Kansas City and Miami at that clip. He tends to short arm throws when the blitz is leaking in, and he left easy touchdowns on the field due to overthrows, and needs to do a better job of throwing receivers away from coverage. This guy will be eventually a plus starter is how he grades out. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some development. Again, he's already played a ton of football. He played 61 games, started 61 games in college, which is a record. And so he knows his way around the football field. NFL, again, a different beast, but he'll find a way. I wouldn't be surprised if he is a day one. Like we'll hear his name on day one. I think a team will come in and grab him.
All right, let's look at Michael Penix. 6'2", 216 pounds. He's a senior out of Washington. And with Michael Penix, he tends to gravitate towards a pocket passer type of game, right? Like producing on the move for him can be a bit of an issue. This is one of those that, when he is, when he's pressured and he has to get out of the pocket, those on the move throws can certainly be a bit of an issue there. And, with that, he tended to rely heavily on his wide receivers to come down with the balls, right? Like the jump balls, granted Washington had a very, very talented wide receiving core there, with some guys that we'll see, their names called here, in April as well. But did rely maybe a little bit too much on the wide receiver skills to come down with jump balls, 50-50 balls there. Timing throws, are a little bit of an area of opportunity as well, right? Like when receivers were coming through, I had to break stride a little bit here and there to be able to catch up to that and really bring those things in, down. Now, one of the things that he does really well is he plants his feet under pressure and finishes throws, especially down the field. He's got a really strong arm. One of those guys that can just kind of flick the ball about 50 yards down the field with the flick of the wrist. Does a tremendous job reading the defense in a pre-snap and adjusting to that. He's able to process very quickly and make on-schedule plays and fit the ball into very, very tight windows. This is a guy that we will likely see sneak into day one. Wouldn't surprise me to see him go in the very, very back couple picks of day one. If not, we'll likely see him called early day two.
All right, so that's our quarterback list, right? We went through the 9 quarterbacks. My question to you guys is, out of the quarterbacks that are going to be coming off in this draft class, right? So it doesn't just have to be this 9, but obviously we just covered arguably the top 9 in this class. Which quarterback would you start your franchise with? And which quarterback do you feel like is going to be the biggest bust?
Can I have 2 nominations for biggest bust?
No,
I would like
because I think your 2 and my 2 are the same. So
I would
want
like I would
It's
like
so
to nominate.
easy to go that route. It's so much easier to go that route than the one that you'd rather build that, which I think says a lot about this quarterback class, right?
I'd like
this
to
isn't the
nominate
greatest
both
class.
JJ and Bo as the 2 biggest busts in this class, right? I think these are the guys that are going to be overdrafted heavily, and that overdrafting tends to lead to that bust candidacy as well.
Oh, see, I would throw out. Okay, I agree with you on JJ. I agree, but I do have 2 other names that I would throw out for bigger busts.
All right, let's hear it.
And I don't know so much that like expectations will be high. I just don't think that they're going to. I think it's more likely that I see these guys starting in a UFL game than I do in an NFL game when it's all said and done after their first year, second year, whatever it is. And I'm going to throw those names out there are Joe Milton. We didn't talk about him, out of Tennessee, a product of a really good offense, right? And really good receivers, and was just a chuck and duck dude who put up some gaudy numbers. And then the second name I'll throw out there is Notre Dame's Sam Hartman. Another guy that we didn't talk about because I don't think he's going to be a factor, but I do think he probably gets drafted. I don't think his NFL career lasts very long, which again, nothing wrong with that. You get to hear your name drafted in the NFL. Good for you. Just don't know that he's built for the NFL. He looks like he's been in the NFL for 45 years. That man is the oldest looking 24-year-old or whatever, however old he is, that I've ever seen.
My bust in this class is Caleb Williams. I don't think he has what it takes mentally to lead a franchise in the NFL. He screams a more talented version of Colin Kaepernick to me. Like he is going to get himself geopolitically involved in things that just take away from football. And we saw what happened with Kaepernick, right? The NFL does not want their quarterbacks doing this. And if he's not able to perform and the Bears can't basically show why they traded Justin Fields to start this clock all over again, it is going to be good night, Irene. So I think Caleb Williams is the bust in this class. Yes, he has the natural talent. I don't think that he has the mental makeup to survive in the NFL. On the flip side, if I had to pick someone in this class to start a franchise, I
convinced myself.
I would lean May or McCarthy. I like the raw talent of May, and yes, there's some things there where I think he could be a serviceable start. I like the fact that McCarthy is just a winner. I like the fact that he did nothing but put Michigan in the right situation, and when it was his number that was called, he was able to step up and deliver in a team that at times didn't use him for 60% of the game, right? They were so run heavy and just leave it to the defense and leave it to the defense. And then you get in these big crunch time moments against upper competition. And then they realize, oh, shoot, we need to use this guy. And he was able to do it. Like that's impressive because Bo Nix, to Derek's point, Bo Nix hasn't beaten a plus team in his entire career other than his first game against Oregon. That was the only game he played bigger than himself, where they were needing a big-time performance, and he was able to lead his team to victory. Other than that, he shrunk against Alabama every time. He shrunk against Georgia every time. He was terrible against LSU. Like, he did it against he shrunk against Washington, and even had the revenge game in the Pac-12 championship and shrunk again. Like, my biggest thing with Bo Nix isn't even entirely his fault. There are plenty of guys playing that are not named Bo Nix that led to these losses, but the wins and loss number goes next to the quarterback. And if he would have won every single one of those games, and we would have said he never lost to Alabama, he never lost to Georgia, he beat Washington twice to get into the college football playoff, he would be the first overall pick. It wouldn't be Caleb Williams. But instead, he lost every single one of those games. There's something there that just doesn't click against plus competition. And so then he becomes a Jag. And if you're drafting a Jag in the first round, you're doomed for failure.
All right. Well, that's we tend to make fun of, right? I remember when we were, sitting around talking about the Jordan Love pick in the first round, right? Like if anybody is going to follow the draft strategy of drafting a quarterback, follow the Packers. Like that really is the way to do it, right? Like this is 3 quarterbacks in a row going back 30 years that, and the book is still very much to be written on Jordan Love. So, but that formula seems to be kind of the winning formula there, right? Like the same thing too, the quarterbacks that we see come in, be able to sit a year, develop, really, and then come in their second season. Yeah, that's where we see a lot of the secret sauce, right? Patrick Mahomes may have been drafted 10 overall, but he didn't play his first season. That was very much the Alex Smith show, and Patrick Mahomes came in and got to learn for a year. These guys that are going to be drafted, especially the first 4, where we likely will see 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 5 or 6 draft picks here. Shoot, these are guys that are going to instantly have to try and come in and shoulder a franchise on day one, and that's a heavy load to go with.
I think the dude that I'm planting my flag with is Jaden Daniels. I think he's got the intangibles. I think that he has the ability to get himself. Look, I'm not saying that he's Lamar Jackson, right? But like he's got the same variables that Lamar Jackson does. He can run, he can throw, he can get himself out of situations, if need be. I don't remember exactly, how good Lamar was just raw talent when he came out of Louisville. Like he was just raw talent. Jaden, I think, is a little bit more polished raw talent than Lamar was coming out of college. And he certainly played enough college football to understand, concepts and in different areas too, right? Like
better competition than what Lamar faced at Louisville.
Right. So I think, I wasn't all that impressed with him. I mean, yeah, I was darn impressed with him last year at LSU. I thought he was on a really good team. But I think he was a big reason why that team was really good. So I'll take Jaden Daniels as the guy that I'll plant my flag on. He's the one that I start my franchise around.
Fair enough. If I'm planting the flag, talent-wise, it's going to be Caleb Williams, just from the pure arm talent there and the abilities that we see. But sneaky pick here, right? Like, I do think that Michael Penix has something there, right? A little bit older, a little bit more mature, has a lot of the pre-snap type of things that we don't necessarily see a lot of quarterbacks be able to rock and roll with until they've been in the league for a little bit. So I'm very interested to see how that part of it kind of translates to going forward. So but that's a guy that again, right? Like part of that bust label and all that is also centered around how high a guy's taken in the draft, right? Like if you're taken with a top 5 pick, the lease is a whole lot shorter and there's a lot less room for error than if you're taken 35th overall. So, but that would be kind of my thoughts there. Any other thoughts here on the boom bust?
No, I think kind of answered the question, right? I mean, that's especially with quarterback, which is why we really haven't touched on it with the rest of the positions is, yes, guys flame out in other positions at a equal and sometimes higher rate than what the quarterback does, but all eyes are on QB1. And so this is the stuff to be mindful of. Not only if your team's drafting one of these guys, but if you're looking at dynasty leagues and what you're doing with some of that, because you're drafting these guys for a reason, right? You're quarterback needy, you in most cases, and you're going to spend that draft capital in a dynasty league or what have you. But landing spot and acumen and all this stuff does play into why you should or should not draft a particular player in some of these spots.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
We got some questions.
We do.
Okay.
All right. Anthony, over on the YouTube asking, can y'all explain why no one's talking about Jordan Whittington or Adonis Smith?
Anais Smith, my friend.
There you
Out
go.
of Texas,
Anais
out of
Smith.
Texas A&M. Anais Smith.
So-
Anais Smith is small. That's why nobody's talking about Anais Smith. He is small in stature. He is going to have durability questions. It kind of had some health issues during his time with the Aggies as well. I think he'll be a day two.
5'10", 200 pounds at the wide receiver.
Yeah, I believe that's a generous 200, and I believe that's also a generous 5'10". I would say that is a very generous 5'10", and a very generous 200. But yeah, he's going to have some size issues. That's going to lead to durability questions. He also had some durability issues at Texas A&M. I think he carves out himself a nice little NFL career. I think, day two, maybe early day three for Anais. It's just this receiving core, this receiver class, and we kind of went over receivers already, but there's a lot of them. It's hard to make a name for yourself as a receiver. I think he probably starts as a special teams guy, and now that kickoffs are going to be a thing again, he was really, really talented in the punt return game and the kick return game, and so I think that's going to be where he makes his name early on and makes a roster that way.
Yeah, and then with Jordan Whittington, he profiles as an undrafted guy. He's 6'1", plays primarily in the slot. He's not fast. He's not overly quick. He has a really small wingspan for a guy who's 6'1". He doesn't really fit a mold. So I don't know the NFL teams know quite what to do with him. Yes, he played well at Texas and was able to have some highlight plays, but his game just doesn't translate to the NFL. So I think a lot of teams are just waiting to see, maybe you take a 7th round flyer on him, but most likely he'll see some camp invites. They're going to bring him in, camp body, special teams guy, depth piece. So he'll be on a practice squad roster somewhere, but I don't think that Whittington is going to see the field of an NFL game for at least quite a few years.
Fair enough. Isn't it crazy that there's 3 wide receivers named Xavier that could go in this draft?
Yeah, you'll have 2 go in the first 3 rounds.
Right.
It's just whether you're able to kind of get the third one off the board. But yeah, it's not an uncommon, or it's not a overly common name, but I do think it's one that we're starting to see pop up a little bit more and more in some of these circles. But I mean, I think it would be a first for what that's worth. If we go through and looked at all that, I don't know that there's ever been 3 Xaviers picked in one NFL draft. So we could see something new happen this year.
There was a name a while back, and it's going to bug me because I can't remember what it was, but there was a name a while back that was like a super popular. There's just like 4 or 5 guys with that name that you're like, oh,
Steve.
Parents. Wasn't one of those, but it was one of those where it's like, parents 20 years ago, not all that original.
Michael.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. So, alrighty, great questions there, Anthony. Any other thoughts here before we rock and roll into the running backs?
Nah, I'm thinking RBs, baby. Let's go.
All right, Kevin, go ahead and lead her off.
All righty then. We're going to start out with Jalen Wright, the junior running back out of Tennessee, 5'10", 210 pounds, kind of profiles as a late second round pick. The guy is fast and explosive. He had a plus rating in the 40 broad jump and vertical. So not only is he able to get up to top speed, he's able to get there relatively quickly. His 10-yard split didn't show his explosiveness like the broad jump and vertical did, but his 40 absolutely did. So he's a guy, he runs with violence. He will break a ton of half-hearted tackles, right? If guys are looking in with arm tackles and just trying to take a swipe at him, he will absolutely go through those. He is a patient runner, and he is decisiveness. He will follow his blocks, set up, and hit the hole. So he does translate well to kind of that zone scheme, if you will. And he runs low with his pads, right? Makes it harder for defenders to get him down. Doesn't take massive hits because of his pad level being down, so he doesn't open himself up to those big, Sports Center top 10 devastating type hits. He's a decent receiver of the football. Obviously, that could use some work, but he did see some balls head his way playing with Tennessee there. Overall, he has good vision. So again, fits in with that one cut zone scheme, but overall he needs to bulk up a little bit. I think 210 is a little bit light. Like for him to get closer to that 220 mark and build up that frame, because right now he's probably too slight of frame to be a true 3-down back, even with his pass catching ability. So he needs to bulk that up, and that'll help with this last issue of he does struggle to get through the bigger defenders with only being 210. So if he's not, able to quite get up to speed and find that hole, bigger defenders do swallow him up relatively easy. So the running back class is not overly great this year, guys, right? I probably should have led with that. But for what it is, I think Jalen Wright is going to be able to step in and be a presence in a dual-headed backfield. I think he's going to find a place there where they will be able to utilize him and take his strengths and kind of accentuate those strengths and make it work. So it'll be interesting to see where he falls again, especially with everybody going to a 2-back system and this not being a super top heavy running back class like we've seen. So he might well be the first running back off the board going in the late second round, just because nobody's talking about him right now.
All right, I've got Bucky Irving, the junior out of Oregon, 5'9", 192, ran a 4.55 at the combine in the 40. Scouting report on him. The big thing, I guess, takes care of the football. He had only one fumble over 486 carries during his career there at Oregon. Built low to the ground with bendy lowers, they call it, and a powerful base. Possesses elusive features, including a spin move and a lateral jump cut. Average hands, but makes an impression on the stats sheet as a pass catcher. Some knocks against him. Does not have ideal size to take on heavy collisions that he would see each game. His feet fly outside of his frame during change of direction, limiting his cut fluidity, and needs to improve his protection technique to deal with NFL blitzers. He is projected right now as an average backup or a special teamer because of, again, this class. He could hear his name in the middle rounds is what the scouting report says there, because he is missing some of the ideal size and explosiveness that you want as an NFL back. That's the big thing. I think we've said it once. We'll say it 1,000 times on this podcast. You can determine a lot of your playing time as a running back by how well you can pick up a blitz and keep your quarterback standing upright. And if you can pick that up, you can find a spot on the field. They'll make a spot on the field for you. Bucky Irving, if he improves upon that, that will help him find a roster spot.
All righty. Blake Corum, the 5'8", 205 senior out of Michigan, Pass pro is a bit of an opportunity for him, right? It's receiving also a little bit of an opportunity here. He's really a 1-2 down back with that with the pass pro and pass catching ability here, but he doesn't really have that typical size of what you would see as a thumper. He does utilize his ability to be elusive, and he can make some good cuts and gain yards that way. Has a little bit of chunk play ability here. He is able to run through some arm tackles when it goes through. Yeah, he's got good balance, and he can hit a hole and really kind of go north and south. But this is a guy we'll probably see running on day 2. Wouldn't surprise me to see him kind of slide all the way into round 3.
I like his heart. The kid does play with a lot of heart, and
Yes, he does.
he showed a lot of that this year with being nicked up and being uh, kind of the go-to, and then really stepping up in the playoffs. So I hope he does well. I do enjoy watching him play. Moving on, Trey Benson, the junior running back out of Florida State, projected as a mid-4th round pick. 6 foot, 216 pounds. First things first, he's coming off some pretty serious injuries, right? ACL, MCL, LCL injuries. So he needs to be worked out. He's going to be examined by team doctors. Obviously, these pre-draft workouts and consultations and everything else, they're going to be highly scrutinized that. So this mid-4th could slip, right? If they don't like what they see, you could see him fall into the 6th round and kind of bring him on as a project and let him rehab. All these things are entirely possible. He has good, not great hands. He's not afraid to stick his nose in there and block, but I think all these running backs need work on pass pro, right? It just, it's something that they don't focus on enough at the collegiate level. And being 216 pounds, he's on that lighter side of average for running backs. So then it's about mechanics. The good thing about Benson is when healthy, he's able to grab that extra gear to get past the downfield defenders, right? So if he gets into that 2nd and 3rd level, he does have the ability to just kind of hit that last sprinter status and kind of blow past some people. So he shows good strength and balance. He is able to run with aggression, but he does look for contact a little bit too often, right? So instead of either taking it towards the sideline, getting out of bounds, or really working on that open field move to make that guy miss, he's pretty content with dropping a shoulder. At 216, it's 50-50, right? You see a lot of injuries with some of these players in general, and it doesn't have to be just running back, but just a lot of these players in general, because these defenders are just so stinking big and fast that if you go looking for contact, you find out how much you can really take quickly. So overall, a decent prospect depending on how this injury plays out. But I do think teams are going to slow play him regardless of where he's taken in the draft to make sure that he is fully healthy. And then they're going to work on capitalizing his speed and see if they can capitalize on his ability to kind of hit that hole and go.
Samesies for the guy that I've got. Jonathan Brooks, the redshirt sophomore out of Texas, clocking in at 6 foot 216. Did not go to the combine because he's coming off an ACL tear in November. And it's kind of a shame because the guy, kind of did his time there at Texas. Redshirted in 21. Played in 7 games behind somebody you may have heard of, Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson, 2 guys that were drafted last year. So this was going to be his year. And he led the team with still 1,139 rushing yards and played in 11 games with 8 starts. Had 10 rushing touchdowns and 1 touchdown receiving, and then towards ACL in November. So there is a lot of tread on those tires. He only had 238 collegiate carries. As NFL caliber accelerator as an outside runner, and has outstanding spatial awareness to create maximum workspace as a runner. Again, the knocks against Jonathan Brooks, suffered that torn ACL in November. So it's going to be, He's not old, right? But still, coming back off of an ACL tear takes time. NFL teams are going to make sure that he is good and ready before they run him out there. He still has a lot of learning to do, given his lack of playing time. Needs to run with more pace and choosing his lanes against pro speed, and will need to square up rushers and limit lead shoulder block approach. Those are some of the knocks against him. Like he was really good for Texas until that ACL tear kind of derailed his season. We saw how good Texas was even without him. So that's the book on Jonathan Brooks. The NFL teams the doctors will get at him. They'll make sure that they bring him along. Wherever he goes, he needs to be brought along slowly, right? And to understand that he's pretty green when it comes to his collegiate experience and that he's coming off of an ACL tear.
All righty. Marshawn Lloyd, 5'9", 220-pound running back, senior out of USC. And Marshawn Lloyd does a really good job of falling forward to pick up those extra yards when he's going through it. There are some concerns around ball security, some concerns around an injury history, but he does have some good burst. He does have some good long speed ability, and he's got really good natural timing when it comes to letting plays kind of develop and picking his hole and going through it. There are times that he can run a little bit too upright, right? Like one of the things that you'd like to see him do is get his pads a little bit lower to the ground and drive through some of these. Pass pro, a little bit of an area of opportunity for him, but he is a high IQ player, and I think that we could see him potentially go in day 2, likely more of a round 3, back end round 2 potential.
Hold on. And then Braylon Allen is my last running back for the night, the junior running back out of Wisconsin, 6'1", 235, right? So I like his size already, projected as kind of a mid-4th round draft pick. He does have some speed to go along with that size. So it's a nice mix there. He is built to be, specifically a thumper, right? Not the greatest hands, and he's not the greatest in pass pro either, even with his size. So 2 things that he's definitely going to need to work on, mainly the pass pro to be able to stay on the field. But he is agile for his size. He makes kind of that ideal makeup for that goal line short yardage back. But his lateral movement is lacking a little bit, and he carries the ball too far away from his body, which can lead to those dreaded turnovers. And there's not a faster way to lose playing time, maybe except for getting your quarterback blasted, than putting the ball on the turf. So definitely some things for Allen to work on, but does have the size and makeup. He's going to get some cracks at being at least a short yardage and goal line back. So possible touchdown vulture for all of us fantasy football players, right?
My last back is carrying the FCS crown. Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State. He is a senior, 6 foot, 218 pounds, coming off a national championship win. The guy is a winner, right? So he's done a lot of winning at South Dakota State, so you like that. Well-built frame, includes flexible lower body and nimble feet. Patient and capable following his blocks as an inside or an outside runner. Adequate footwork to reroute the run according to traffic with relative success. And he's got the size, strength, and pass-catching background for 3rd down reps. Some knocks against him. Needs to run with more decisive bursts at the point of entry. Average shake to elude big hitters from the 2nd level. Could have issues squeezing through tighter run creases. Hands are fairly average when catching throws outside of his frame. The biggest knock against him is that he did not play FBS football. So like level competition will always be a knock on people coming from the FCS, even though they've proven that they can play. If you can play, you can play. So Isaiah Davis coming out of South Dakota State, ran a 4.57 at the combine, had a 34.5 vertical and a 9 foot 11 inch broad jump. Good backup, they say, with the potential to develop into a starter. I like him because he's a winner.
All righty. Brings us to the last running back we're going to cover tonight, and that is Will Shipley, the 5'11", 206-pound junior out of Clemson. He's got some really quick burst. When touching the ball, right? He has the ability to set up defenders with both his feet and his eyes. He is definitely more of a complement back, though, at the next level. He really lacks the home run speed. There's some ball security issues. Falling forward is not really a strong suit of his, but he's got good receiving ability. So we could potentially see him out there a little bit on some third down, things like that with those hands. And he's got some pretty good special team ability. And that I think is where we'll probably see him on the field more so here in, the early part of his career. Is out there special teams, especially with some of these new rules where we may see some punt return or some kick returns here. But this is a guy we're going to likely see in a day 3 position. Wouldn't surprise me to see him fall all the way down into rounds 5 or 6. So, all righty. Well, guys, any other thoughts here on the running backs?
I think the only guy, and again, I watched him quite a bit, but I think the only guy that we didn't really touch on that I have probably real interest in here right away is Ray Davis out of the University of Kentucky. He's a little bit short, right, at 5'8", but he's got that bowling ball mentality almost. So I think he's going to be able to carve out a role fairly quickly, only because he played so long in college. He's seen a lot of film, but his flaws the same as so many others. He's not great again about picking up the blitz, and he's not great in overall pass protection. His hands are okay, but he was fun to watch, right? The Kentucky team really relied on him, especially after Will Levis went to the NFL. So I think he's got the right mental makeup, and some of the physical aspects to carve out a role, but special teams guy. But I think he could also be a plug and play guy and be that secondary role, or even that third back to come off the bench and spell everybody who gets 5 touches a game to kind of start his career.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about this, and Kevin said it kind of at the start, is that this class isn't that great. It's not the best running back class. In fact, the top 2 guys are Trey Benson and Jonathan Brooks, and Brooks is coming off of an ACL tear in November, and throw Blake Corum on that, who was used extensively in Michigan, right? But worked in behind a really good offensive line. So like that's why he was so good at Michigan. That O-line was nasty. It may not be that way for whatever team he goes to, right? These offensive lines in the NFL are kind of hit and miss when it comes to, how effective they can be. And probably more of a defensive lines in the NFL are much better than your average college line is. So I think it's just one of those where, like, not a lot of these guys, there isn't a Bijan Robinson in this class, right? There's not that. Why am I blanking on his name right now? That went to the Lions. Williams.
Jahmyr
right?
Gibbs.
Jahmyr Gibbs. Thank you. Sorry. Williams. It's just a random name that I threw out there. But there's not those running backs out there this year. So I think that those are things that we're going to have to keep in mind. I just don't think that running backs will be the position that, like, when we get into rookie drafts, right, for these dynasty leagues, like, running back's not going to really be your first option. I don't think, because it's going to be hard to justify that.
Yeah, right. It's one of those years where the later your rookie draft is, the better, because then you can start getting the camp news and notes and how these teams are using some of these guys, what the feedback is from the coaches and the beat writers. Like, you're going to have to do some research if you're looking to draft running back in your rookie draft for dynasty formats this season, because, like Alex said, there's not a Bijan, there's not a Travis Etienne, there's not a Najee Harris, like, there's not that even Kenneth Walker, right? Jonathan Taylor, guys who went top end of day 2, and not necessarily first round picks, but it just, you don't have that overall talent that people are super excited about. So it's going to be a lot of research to figure out who's going to carve out the biggest role and who has the clearest path to volume, because that's what all these guys are going to need. They need volume. There's not too many of these guys who are one touch and go. And the couple that really are at the top end of this class are coming off an injury. So it makes it really hard to gauge.
Absolutely. And then we did have the comment come in from the GMM Network talking about if you can't pass pro, you can't be a 3-down boy.
Nope.
Very
Yeah,
true.
Damn Skippy.
I've said that a ton here on this podcast. The sooner you can figure out pass protection, the sooner, as a running back, the sooner you can get on the field.
Absolutely. I do have a trivia question, so to speak, for y'all. Are you ready?
Yes,
around
cap is on.
around NFL quarterbacks and the draft. So from 1992 all the way up to last year, there were 85 quarterbacks taken in the first round. There were 10 quarterbacks of those 85 that did not start one game during their rookie season. Can you name all 10?
No. Go back to 92.
No.
No.
I'll throw two names out there, though.
Okay.
God, no, he would have started, though. Not Ryan Leaf, right?
That is incorrect. There's another Chargers quarterback on the list, though.
Phyllis?
Yep. There's one.
Who?
Jordan Love.
2.
Aaron Rodgers.
3.
Give me Pat. Did he start the last
Pat
game of that
started
year?
week 16 or 17 and beat the Broncos.
That's right.
Yeah.
Herbo would have been on that list if it weren't for the team
punctured
doctor.
lung, right?
Right.
Yeah. There's so many guys to go through.
You got 3 out of the 10 so far, right? I will.
I go to bust more than I go to like dudes that just sat. I go like a Jamarcus Russell.
Right. I will. I'll throw in some names here. Dante Culpepper was one. Chad Pennington was another.
Who did he sit behind with the Jets?
I'd have to look that part up.
I forget he was a first-round pick.
Yes.
Randy Moss made him a first-round pick.
The Randy Moss effect for sure. Anyway, Alex, if you want to look that one up, I'll keep rocking and rolling through.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm looking.
Okay. Chad Pennington, Carson Palmer, JP Lossman.
Yeah, what a terrible pick that was that Buffalo had. Right? Oh my gosh.
You mentioned Phillip Rivers. Jason Campbell was on that list. You mentioned Aaron Rodgers. Brady Quinn was on the list. Jake Locker was on the list, and then Jordan Love. So,
revisionist history, like more than half those guys were dreadful.
Yes. And a lot of that just goes to show that these teams will reach for a quarterback to try and get their guy instead of kind of accurately going off of that. And
are we still thinking 6.5? That was kind of the number that we tossed out last week for the first round in quarterbacks. Alex, still thinking 6.5, Alex?
Alex gave it, I thought 5.5.
I think 5.5 was the number because I was on the fence about 6.
Oh, over. 6 are going. It's a matter of whether you think a 7th is going to get picked at 30, 31, 32.
Yeah. My thought on that is there won't be 5. It'll either be 4 or it'll be 6. There won't be 5.
Over. If you're giving me 5.5, I'm taking the over. 6.5 is where I pivot.
I wonder.
Yeah, it's one of those. The way I see it is, it's going to be either 4 of them are taken or 6 of them are taken. We won't see 5.
There's too many quarterback needy teams.
Yes, but we thought that last year too, right? Like once that happened, and I think that very well may be the case where we see guys that we think will go up there, and then something happens, and you see somebody fall, and some of these guys fall out of the first round right into the top of the second.
This year has to be worse though. Like you've seen too many guys. You've seen too many teams make moves to where they have no other option.
Right. Yeah.
Bears move on from Fields. They have to take a quarterback. The Patriots moved on from Mac Jones. They have to take a quarterback. The Commanders moved on from Sam Howell. They have to take a quarterback.
Right.
Right.
Well,
the Vikings are looking at Sam Darnold.
Right.
And the Broncos are looking at Jared Stidham. As much as I don't even want the Broncos to take a quarterback, like these are all just really strong possibilities.
I'm really hoping that they don't take a quarterback, and that will put them in prime position without having to leverage the farm to try and move up to get one of these guys. Because you start Jared Stidham for 17 games, there's a good chance you're picking in the top 5 anyway.
Yeah, and then you're going after, whoever, Carson Beck and the rest of the cast, right?
Right.
So what I've found is DraftKings has they have a total over 4.5 for -200, under 4.5 for +155. And as history tells us, since 2018, 5 quarterbacks have been taken in the first round twice. In 2018, do we think we can name all of those?
2018, who was that? That was Baker's class, wasn't it?
Yep. So we just mentioned a bunch of them.
Yeah, you had Baker, you had Josh Allen in that class, you had Patrick Mahomes in that class, you had Lamar Jackson in that class.
He was not a first rounder.
Who's that?
Patrick Mahomes. They don't
he
have
was
him
10th overall.
Unless
he didn't go in that draft class. He very well may not.
I think he was a year before that.
Okay, that could be. But I know he was pick 10.
Baker, Darnold, Allen, Rosen.
Oh, yes.
Lamar Jackson.
The Josh Rosen.
In 2019, there were 3 quarterbacks taken. That was Kyler, Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins. There's another name for you. In 2020, there were 4 taken in the first round. You guys should be able to name those. All currently starting quarterbacks in the league.
2020?
Yeah. It's COVID year, coming off the COVID year.
Bruh.
Or excuse me, it was in the middle of the COVID year. So their rookie year was the COVID year. Yes, Kevin, you said Burrow.
Yeah, you had Burrow, Herbert, Tua, and who was the 4th guy there? Don't tell me. Okay, tell me. Oh, it's Jordan Love.
Yeah, it was the what are we doing? It was the reason why Aaron Rodgers is rehabbing in New York and not Wisconsin. In 2021, we had 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round. That was Trevor Lawrence,
and then you had Zach Wilson. Then you had Trey Lance.
So we had 3 in the first 3 picks, right?
Yep. And then you had
the first 3.
Then you had the Bears trade up to get Justin Fields and Mac Jones taken, I believe, at pick 15.
And I'd like to point out that 3 of those guys are no longer on the team that drafted them.
Yeah.
And Zach Wilson is hanging on by a thread in New York, right?
The average
price tag's too damn high to move. It ain't for lack of trying.
And really, the average tenure of most of these first round quarterbacks are like 3.4 to 3.6 years with the team that drafted them in the first round.
Yeah. I mean, look, Baker's not with the team that drafted him. Darnold's not with the team that drafted him. Allen is. Rosen is not in the league anymore. And Jackson is with the team that drafted him. Kyler's still with his team. Daniel Jones is still with his team. Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace. Right?
Yep.
It was Haskins, wasn't it? Burrow's still with his team, Tua, Herbo, and Jordan Love. So the 2020 class, like they nailed that one. 2021, not so good. 2022, only one quarterback was taken in the first round.
And he's no longer with that team either.
He is also no longer with that team. And Mr. Irrelevant, the last guy taken, is the one that led his team to a Super Bowl this year. And then 2023, 3 quarterbacks taken. So I can see where they get the 4.5 number because bettors, look at trends and everything. But Kevin, I think you're right. I think it is 6 at a minimum.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of talk saying that we're going to see 4 in the first 5 or 6 picks.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if teams move up to try and get their guy, right? Like sell the farm.
Right.
San Francisco did it. And look, San Francisco did it and missed, and they still made it to a Super Bowl. So, like, there's a path out there for these teams. And
that's the John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan effect with tons of cap space and hitting every other pick aside from that one.
Sure.
Right. I mean, name another team that can leverage
the Rams
first to
sold
do
out
that.
for a Super Bowl. Like it
but
happens.
that was them selling to get. They didn't do it through the draft though. They didn't sell out, and they just dumped it in other ways. I don't know. I'm hoping 4 go in the first 5. I really am, because I don't want the Broncos to take a quarterback. I don't. Like, sit back, see what offensive line or edge rusher come your way, and pick the best one available between the 2. Like, you need a pass rusher and start working on some of these other things, and then run Stidham out, be terrible for 17 games, and then draft in the top 5 like you should have this year, except for Russell Wilson screwed the Broncos on his way out and won too many games.
I mean, it's not like we're not used to being, terrible. So,
by the way, best I can tell, and I think it's not going to be a best I can tell. Chad Pennington backed up Vinny Testaverde.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see that.
On the 2000 New York Jets.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
The team that beat Manning in the playoffs, right?
Alex went thinking mode there.
Hold on, I am thinking. I'm trying to pull up there.
I'm pretty sure that's the team that beat Peyton Manning in the playoffs in the divisional round. I say that like Peyton didn't lose enough playoff games to Tom Brady, but I mean, whatever.
Right. I was trying to see if I could pull that up, and
I can't find their. Hold on, what they do? They went 9-7-0. I don't know if they made the playoffs that year.
Yeah, I don't think they did.
But it might have been the next year in 2001. Vinny was on that team for a while.
Yes, he was. Vinny.
Yeah, fair enough.
All righty. Well, we'll come up with some more fun little trivia games here.
We've done it on the back end of the show. We've gone into the weeds versus our typical on the front end of the show.
It's true. That's true. For anybody that's stuck around, congratulations on some weed talk here. In the weed talk. There we go. All right.
And on that note,
that's probably the best way to end it.
Right. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. Thank you for everyone who commented and all that good stuff. We appreciate everybody's feedback. Like Derek said, the next few weeks, all about the mock draft as we get into the home stretch before the draft. So be sure to tune in to our show next Tuesday. And as always, you guys can find us at Good Old Boys FF, wherever you consume your social media content. Thanks again, y'all.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for us tonight. He's Alex. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.